Okay, the next item of business is a statement by Ivan McKee on responding to RAAC in the public sector across Scotland. The Minister will take questions at the end of his statement. Therefore, there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Ivan McKee. Minister, up to 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I'm pleased this afternoon to provide Parliament with an update on the work that has been going on across the public sector to identify and manage reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, or RAAC as it's better known. Where RAAC has been used in Scotland, it has typically been for roofs and different types of buildings, with only limited use in walls and floors. RAAC started to be used in the 1950s and continued through to the 1980s. There is currently no manufacture in Scotland or indeed in the rest of the UK, and it's no longer used here. However, it is still manufactured and used in other countries, including Germany, South Korea and Mexico. In responding to emerging concerns, a cross-sector working group was formed in the summer of 2023, and this group pulled together those from across Scotland with an interest in RAAC, including professional advisers and academics, to ensure that knowledge, understanding and best practice could be shared. RAAC, of course, is not just a Scottish issue, it is also present across England and Wales, with engagement taking place between the Scottish Government and other governments on the topic. RAAC came to public prominence in late August 2023 following the UK Government Department for Education's decision to change its approach to risk with regards to RAAC in schools in England. Work had already been undertaken in Scotland by that time, particularly in the health, justice and school sectors. The Institution of Structural Engineers note that properly maintained RAAC should perform no differently to any other comparable building material. It may remain serviceable and does not need to be removed simply because it is RAAC. The cross-sector working group has heard from experts and professional bodies who have refuted claims such as the limited 30-year lifespan of RAAC. Where RAAC has been properly manufactured, specified, installed and maintained, then it can continue to fulfil its function in the long term. If RAAC is not properly maintained, it can deteriorate and will need to be managed appropriately. This may include ongoing monitoring, remediation or replacement. The Scottish Government advises building owners to use the guidance produced by the Institution for Structural Engineers for assessment. We continue to urge building owners with RAAC to seek appropriate professional advice and follow the guidance. My thanks go to everyone that has engaged with us to allow an understanding of RAAC across the public sector in Scotland. It is only with that engagement we have been able to develop the complete picture. In schools, a total of 4 were found to have RAAC, and that number is now down to 29. A number of those schools will be replaced through the £2 billion Learning Estate Investment Programme. Schools that still have RAAC are taking appropriate measures to manage it and have longer-term plans to address it. Our NHS estate has also been affected. Members will no doubt be aware of the work to remove RAAC at Knoll Hospital in the Borders. 50 other NHS properties were found to have RAAC. Some of those buildings were due to be vacated before RAAC was discovered, such as the Denburn Health Centre in Aberdeen. NHS Scotland Assure is working with NHS boards to further assess the condition of RAAC to allow a national programme to be developed. Patient and staff safety has not been compromised because of RAAC. Where areas have had to be closed, services have been provided from elsewhere. Nothing is more important than the safety of patients and staff in our NHS. Housing has undoubtedly been an area where there has been considerable focus. In Scotland, local authorities, social landlords and the Scottish Housing Regulator have undertaken a comprehensive assessment of the stock. While the vast majority of social landlords don't have RAAC, there are around 3,000 homes, around 1,000 of which are privately owned, that do. I am pleased with the progress that social landlords are making to assess and remediate RAAC where required and to manage properties in the longer term. The housing subgroup on RAAC brings together SG officials, social landlords and other professionals to share best practice as well as test approaches to RAAC management. My colleague, the Minister for Housing, and his officials have engaged closely with local authorities as they have addressed the issue of RAAC in various council areas. They have also met the Association of British Insurers, as well as engaged with UK Finance and with residents' groups. I encourage lenders and insurers to treat homeowners fairly in dealing with them, and I ask that they consider the condition of the RAAC and not just respond to the fact that RAAC is in the property. Mortgage lenders and insurers need to pay heed to the Institution of Structural Engineering guidance, just as building owners do. Earlier this month, the Minister for Housing met with residents in Aberdeen affected by RAAC to hear their concerns directly. He also heard some of the alternative solutions that have been put forward to councils. A visit to meet similarly affected residents in Dundee is also being arranged. The Scottish Government remains committed to supporting local authorities with flexibilities within their existing budgets. They have responsibility to support housing in their areas through, for example, the scheme of assistance in place to help homeowners. The support available is for each local authority to decide based on its resources and local priorities. Having said that, each area is different. What one local authority is doing to address RAAC may not be appropriate for another, not only due to the number of properties affected, but also due to the condition of the RAAC. In North Lanarkshire, for example, due to the low number of affected properties, the local authority is making grants to homeowners to help cover the costs. Dundee and Edinburgh, meanwhile, are carrying out pilots to provide a permanent solution to concerns about RAAC without the need to remove it and incur significant costs. We are ready to work with any local authority to develop solutions to address residents' concerns. To assist landlords and owners, I am also pleased to confirm that the Institution of Structural Engineers are currently developing, with support from the Scottish Government, guidance specific to RAAC in domestic properties. This will include potential ways to effectively support any RAAC in situ, or where this is not possible, how it can be removed safely. We expect the guidance to be published in the summer. The Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors will also be publishing a consumer guide shortly. The approaches being taken reflect what I said earlier. RAAC is not fundamentally a defective material. If it's in good condition, it can be managed and remain in situ for many years. The Scottish Government will not be imposing a deadline for the removal of RAAC from public buildings. Rather, it is for those with RAAC to manage their estate as they consider necessary, taking into account their priorities. Since RAAC first came to prominence almost 2 years ago, the Scottish Government has repeatedly called on the UK Government to make available a dedicated RAAC remediation fund. This has so far not been forthcoming. We have written again ahead of the forthcoming UK spending review to repeat that call. Taking learning from RAAC into account, we are establishing a cross-sector building safety forum with external stakeholders to work to identify potential future safety issues. Made up of representatives from across the public sector, it met for the first time last week. It will report to the Ministerial Working Group on Building and Fire Safety. In closing, Presiding Officer, I'd like to thank again all of those who have been involved in identifying, managing and addressing concerns caused by RAAC. While there are undoubtedly still issues to address, we have a far greater understanding of RAAC across the public sector in Scotland. Where RAAC has been found, building managers will have taken appropriate steps to ensure the safety of the building and its users. And finally, again, if you have a building with RAAC, please seek any professional advice and follow the appropriate guidance. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. The Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in his statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for questions, after which we'll move on to the next item of business. I'd be grateful if members who wish to put a question were to press their request to speak buttons. And I call Megan Gallagher.
I thank the Presiding Officer and the Minister for advance sight of his statement. Despite knowing for years that RAAC presents a serious safety risk, the SNP has failed to take action to address this issue. Whilst councils face mounting repair bills to fix RAAC in public buildings, local governments' budgets have been cut year on year. And at the same time that politicians prioritise a debate on toilet use at Holyrood, thousands of homeowners have been forced out of their homes, making mortgage payments on properties they cannot access, whilst the value of their property plummets. In Aberdeen, SNP councillors refused to commit funding for RAAC repairs, meaning homeowners will have to shell out thousands on a new roof or see their homes demolished. It is a complete injustice that through no fault of their own, homeowners in RAAC-affected properties find themselves living in defective homes with little to no resale value. So I would ask the Minister, does he think that this is an acceptable situation for homeowners to be in? And why won't the SNP, at either a local or national level, step in to support those who are affected by this scandal?
Minister.
Well, first of all, I would say that it's not helpful to the situation that ourselves and more importantly, homeowners and others find themselves in for the member to be scaremongering to that extent. As I've indicated in my statement, and the member should know if she's familiar with this, RAAC of itself isn't necessarily a problem if it's properly maintained, and it does depend on the risk assessments that are undertaken in that regard, and the professional advice from institutional structural engineers and others point to that important point. With regards to the funding aspects, in terms of local authority budgets, of course, this government has given local authorities a record settlement in the budget settlement for this year. But we continue to engage also with local authorities affected to understand how we can best work with them to provide support as necessary. But it's also worth reflecting on the fact that while the Conservative government was in power at the UK level, they of course refused also to put in place a scheme to financially support homeowners, because this of course is an issue that affects the whole of the UK. So I would urge the member to tone down the language and focus on the facts when it comes to addressing this particular issue.
Mark Griffin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Across Scotland, lives have been turned upside down by RAAC in homes. It's not scaremongering to say that some are stuck in unsellable, unsafe properties. Others have been forced to leave with their possessions left behind. Concern isn't enough. People are desperate for action to secure their homes. Now, given that housing is fully devolved, will the Scottish Government map the scale of this crisis and respond to the call for a remediation scheme as recommended by the Royal Incorporation of Architects in Scotland?
Minister.
Well, of course, we recognise the impact that the current situation has on homeowners. Of course, that's why we continue to engage with local authorities on this. And as I've indicated, my colleague, the Minister for Housing, has met with residents and will continue to do so to understand and address the challenges. It's why we're working with interested parties in the cross-sector working group on this. It's why we're engaging with the Institution of Structural Engineers and indeed with RICS on guidance to support homeowners. It's why we're engaging with the Association of British Insurers and others to address other issues around about insurance and mortgage payments to support homeowners and make sure that these issues are addressed. And we'll continue to do so because we recognise the challenge that this faces. But it's also worth, of course, identifying the fact that the current UK government, Labour government, who my colleagues in the Scottish Government have written to on a number of occasions, have refused to engage along the issue of putting in place a UK remediation scheme, because, again, recognising that this is a UK-wide problem.
Stuart McMillan, to be followed by Graham Simpson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The previous UK Government committed to, and I quote, spend what it takes to deal with remediating RAAC, and however, as a RAAC fund was not delivered by the Conservatives, and Labour have simply failed to deliver the financial support needed. I know some Conservatives might not want to hear that, but they know that actually is the truth. But does the Minister share my concern that the UK Government in action has been slowing down the process of addressing problems with RAAC across the UK?
Minister.
Yes, it does. And it's a case of promises not honoured by previous and indeed current UK governments, and that's why ministers have written to and engaged with the UK government on numerous times since the issue of RAAC came to prominence. It's important to note that RAAC is a UK-wide issue, and we therefore expect the UK government to support a UK-wide approach. And it's frustrating that, having created the circumstances we now found ourselves in, they're resisting our calls to address that issue and make it right.
Graham Simpson, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Thank you. In September last year, the Scottish Government published a report on RAAC in the public sector, and that report said that in the NHS estate there was a likelihood that the number of buildings containing RAAC had fluctuated from an initial 395 buildings to 560. Today we're told that 50 definitely have it. So is that number likely to go up? And can the Minister explain why in his statement he's not mentioned the Police Scotland estate, the Courts estate, Scottish Water estate, colleges or prisons?
Minister.
Well, I identify my statement that there are a number of public sector buildings, and I haven't gone through and listed them all, but if the member's interested in the details on that, I'm very happy to share that information. Of course, the work continues across the sectors as identified: health, education, justice and the wider public sector, to identify buildings, to do those technical risk assessments, to understand what the scope of those the RAAC condition is. And as I said, just because it's got RAAC doesn't mean that any action necessarily needs needs to be taken, and then once that's identified and that process obviously is ongoing and proceeding at pace, then for the specific public body to take a perspective on what needs to be done to address that. And in some cases that has involved demolition of buildings and replacement. In other cases it's involved temporary closure. In other cases the risk assessment is such that no action needs to be taken. But of course that is very much on the specifics of the building and the responsibility of the public body to address that issue. As I said during my statement, the safety of public sector workers and the users of those buildings is of the paramount concern.
Rona Mackay, to be followed by Claire Baker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can the Minister update Parliament on engagement between the Scottish Government and local authorities regarding steps that are being taken to remove RAAC in local authority buildings?
Minister.
Yeah, we're continuing to engage with local authorities and indeed with Aberdeen Council and with others, and indicated in my statement the work that different local authorities and the approach that different local authorities were undertaking in this regard, depending on their local circumstances. Scottish Government ministers will continue to engage with local authorities to support them where we can to be able to address this hugely significant issue.
Claire Baker, to be followed by Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you. It is disappointing that the Scottish Government doesn't recognise their own role here and responsibility for this area as a devolved policy. But can I ask the Minister to talk about the condition of RAAC and mortgages and lenders and insurers? I understand that the home report system is under review at the moment. Is there scope to include the condition of RAAC and information on RAAC on this? Minister.
Well, of course, the review of the home report will be evidence-led, and if there is evidence that suggests that this would be beneficial to have RAAC included, then of course that would be considered as part of that review. So I'm very happy to engage with the member separately on that specific issue, or indeed with anyone who's got a professional or other interest in what should be included in the home report. My ministerial colleagues, as appropriate, would be very happy to engage on the specifics of that.
Audrey Nicholl, to be followed by Maggie Chapman.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm very grateful to the Minister for Housing for his engagement with me on the RAAC situation impacting around 500 council and privately owned houses in my constituency. And I'm also grateful for his recent engagement with community representatives to discuss the situation impacting private homeowners and to hear first-hand of the devastating impact this issue has had on the community. And while the focus of the statement today is the public sector, the Tory case highlights the complexities that arise in responding to RAAC, where former council housing stock has been sold and is now in private ownership. The Scottish Government's previously indicated fiscal flexibility as an option available to councils, including Aberdeen City Council, to finance their response to RAAC. So can the Minister advise if this is still the case?
Minister.
Where local authorities come to us with solutions that require flexibility within existing funding settlements, we're more than willing to consider them. On Aberdeen specifically, I know that the Council has sent a proposal for using the Housing Infrastructure Fund, and housing officials are currently appraising that proposal and will reply shortly once we've given that full consideration.
Maggie Chapman, to be followed by Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Over 1,400 homes in the North East, many council-owned, are affected by RAAC. But councils still do not have accurate numbers of all affected properties because, despite requests from residents, the surveys required to confirm the presence of RAAC are not always being undertaken. What assurances can the Minister give to residents that councils will not only undertake those required surveys in a systematic way, but also how can he ensure that communities are included in discussions about financially viable and family and community appropriate solutions?
Minister. Well, of course, the Council have responsibility to assess those properties, and we are working with them to ensure that happens as rapidly as possible. And clearly, there's a number of properties to be addressed, but that work is ongoing and that information is becoming available. And of course, we'll continue to engage with local authorities and, very importantly, with residents affected. As already indicated, my ministerial colleague, the Minister for Housing, has met with residents affected to discuss this issue, and will continue to do so to make sure their perspectives are properly heard.
Cole-Hamilton, to be followed by Jackie Dunbar.
Presiding officer, you will recall that I was the first in this chamber to raise the problem with RAAC some 2 years ago at FMQs, and almost every month since that occasion I have raised it again and always asked that the government recognise its responsibility here, to local authorities in particular, to make whole those buildings like Blackhall Library in my constituency and many other schools around the country, so that they are not left scrabbling around for the cash. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, is this a reflection? Does his statement suggest that there is no fund coming? And if so, what does he have to say to those local authorities who have been looking to his government for money?
Minister.
The issue of funding, as I've indicated already in answer to previous questions and in my statement, we continue to engage with local authorities to explore financial flexibilities that are available to allow them to support homeowners and others appropriately. Clearly, as I've indicated, different local authorities are impacted to a different extent and are handling it in terms of the circumstances they find themselves in different ways. So it's important to take that into account. But as I said, we continue to engage with local authorities, and I've cited the case of Aberdeen, where we are having those detailed discussions about the use potential of the Housing Infrastructure Fund and fiscal flexibilities around that. But I would also make the point that we again call on the UK Government to put in place a UK-wide fund to be able to support this issue across the UK, as the previous UK Government committed to, and we think that the current UK Government should follow through on that.
Jackie Dunbar, to be followed by Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can the Minister provide any update regarding the work of the RAAC cross-sector working group and how this can support the sharing of learning and best practice in the response by public bodies to RAAC?
Minister.
Yeah, the cross-sector working group on RAAC was established just prior to the UK Government's decision to close schools because of the condition of RAAC, bringing together public bodies affected by RAAC along with professional advisors and academics. And it's created a network where relevant current information can be shared, such as the Institution of Structural Engineers, noting that there is no evidence to support the oft-quoted 30-year lifespan of RAAC. More recently, the focus has been on housing, with the housing subgroup meeting regularly. Most recently, the group held a presentation on potential solutions to issues with RAAC that do not require a full roof replacement. Lessons learned from the RAAC working group have been taken forward with the establishment of the Cross-Sector Building Safety Forum and its remit to consider current and emerging building safety issues. And if anyone's interested, minutes for all cross-sector working group meetings, including subgroups, are on the Scottish Government website.
Craig Hoy, to be followed by George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Despite the Minister's amnesia, £95 million in Barnett consequentials for RAAC remediation was given to the Government, but it was absorbed into the Scottish Government's general revenue budget rather than being earmarked specifically for addressing the RAAC crisis. This implies that now remedial works can only proceed at a pace this Government can afford, rather than based upon the urgency. But given the safety concerns and the substantial costs faced by local authorities, what steps will the Minister take to ensure that that dedicated funding is restored? Or in other words, where's the RAAC money gone, Minister?
Minister.
I stand to be corrected, but as far as I'm aware, and my colleagues on the front bench are aware, there's no specific RAAC fund that's come to the Scottish Government from the UK Government, but we shall double-check what the comments the member has made to verify that and respond accordingly. But certainly, to the best of our recollection, there's no specific fund for RAAC from the UK Government. Indeed, had there been such a fund, then it would have been very easy for the UK Government, either the previous Conservative UK Government or indeed the current UK Labour Government, to have responded back to us in response to the letters we've written to them to make that very point. So I think if that was indeed the case, then they wouldn't have been slow to come back and point that out to us. So I think that the member is a bit confused, perhaps, on that regard. And as I reiterate our call that the UK Government should, as they promised previously, step up to the plate and implement a funding solution to support the remediation of RAAC across the UK.
George Adam, to be followed by Douglas Lumsden.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And on that point, Minister, there's been much said today about the UK National Remediation Fund, and the Minister will be aware that the UK RAAC campaign group have been calling for a national remediation fund to be provided by the UK Government. What assessment has the Minister made of the campaign group's calls?
Minister.
Well, in terms of a call for a UK-wide remediation fund, of course, I've already indicated we're very supportive of that. We're aware of the calls being made by the UK RAAC campaign group, and the petition is being considered by the Citizens Participation in Public Petitions Committee. And the Minister for Housing is fully engaged with the committee while they consider that petition. We, of course, have every sympathy for homeowners affected by RAAC. And as I said in my statement, we have written several times now to the UK Government calling for a RAAC fund to be established to provide support to those affected. And again, I call on them to make such a fund available as part of the upcoming UK spending review.
And Douglas Lumsden.
Presiding Officer, in the statement today, the Minister has called for insurers and mortgage lenders to treat homeowners fairly. So will he also instruct the SNP administration at Aberdeen City Council to treat homeowners fairly and improve the derisory offers that have been made to homeowners in Torry?
The Minister can only answer on questions for which the Minister has devolved responsibility. If the Minister wishes to address the question in that regard, the Minister may do so.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. So I would reiterate what I've said already. The Scottish Government continues to engage with the Council in Aberdeen and indeed councils across the country to discuss the financial flexibilities that can be afforded through funds that are available to be able to support homeowners, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you. That concludes the ministerial statement. Point of order, Craig Hoy.
I thank the Presiding Officer for granting me the point of order. Can I just seek to put on the record and find out from you how the record can be corrected on the basis that an FOI released last year revealed that the Scottish Government received £97.1 million in Barnett consequentials following the UK Government's announcement in March 2020 to remediate non-ACM cladding systems in residential buildings over where leaseholders would incur costs or where the costs are a threat for stability of social housing providers. I mistook that for RAAC rather than cladding, so therefore I'd just like to correct the record.
Thank you, Mr Hoy, for that clarification. It's not a point of order, but it is on the record. The next item of business is consideration of legislative consent motion 17708 in the name of Jenny Minto on tobacco and vapes bill UK legislation, and I call on Jenny Minto to speak to and move the motion.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To put the tobacco and vapes bill in context, around 9,000 people a year die from tobacco-related illnesses in Scotland. Each one of these people represent a loved one, a family member whose life has been shortened through tobacco addiction. The tobacco and vapes bill is about stopping young people becoming hooked on tobacco, stopping them starting, using tobacco and creating a tobacco-free Scotland in 2034. Scotland has a range of world-leading tobacco control measures. We were the first country to introduce a ban on smoking in indoor public places in March 2006, and I would like to move the motion in my name.
Thank you, Minister. And the question on this motion will be put at decision time. There is one question to be put as a result of today's business, and I'm minded to accept a motion without notice under Rule 11.2.4 of Standing Orders that decision time be brought forward to now, and I invite Lorna Slater to move the motion.
Moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Slater. And the question is that decision time be brought forward to now. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed, and the question is that motion 17708 in the name of Jenny Minto on legislative consent motion, tobacco and vapes bill, UK legislation be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed, and that concludes decision time, and I close this meeting.